Dear students, welcome back. In the previous session, we have discussed about the branches, that is lateral branches of abdominal aorta. Now in this session, we are going to discuss about the inferior vena cava. The inferior vena cava is formed by the union of right and left common iliac veins. So, right and left common iliac veins on the right side of the body of L5 vertebrae. Okay, on the right side of the body of L5 vertebrae. So this is L5. It ascends in front of the vertebral column. So it ascends in front of the vertebral column. Here we can find the aorta. Okay, on the right side of the aorta. So it ascends in front of the vertebral column. On the right side of the aorta, grooves the posterior surface of the liver. Grooves the posterior surface of the liver. Pierces the central tendon. Finally, pierces the central tendon of the diaphragm at the level of T8 vertebrae. Okay, and opens into the lower and posterior part of the right atrium. It finally opens into lower and the posterior part of the right atrium. So this is the course of inferior vena cava. This inferior vena cava is formed by the union of the right and left common iliac veins on the right side of the body of the L5, and it ascends in front of the vertebral column on the right side of the aorta, grooves the posterior surface of the liver and pierces the central tendon of the diaphragm at the level of the vertebrae T8 and opens into the right atrium. In the right atrium, it opens into lower and posterior part of the right atrium. So this is the course of inferior vena cava. And if you see the tributaries of the inferior vena cava, the tributaries are mainly formed by the common iliac veins, the third and fourth lumbar veins, a right testicular or ovarian vein, next the renal veins and the hepatic veins. So one is the common iliac veins, and then the lumbar veins and the right gonadal vein and pair of renal veins and the hepatic veins. So these are all the tributaries. Now we will see the tributaries in detail. So the common iliac veins formed by the union of external and internal iliac veins. So here you can find in this pic, external and internal iliac vein forms the common iliac vein here, and these iliac veins unite to form the inferior vena cava. Each vein receives an iliolumbar vein. So here you can find each vein receives the iliolumbar vein, and the median sacral vein joins the common iliac vein. Here you can see the median sacral vein also joins the common iliac vein. Okay, this is about the common iliac veins. Now we'll move on to the lumbar veins, especially the third and fourth lumbar vein along with the corresponding arteries, and open into the posterior aspect of the inferior vena cava. So this will open on the posterior aspect of the inferior vena cava. The veins of the left side. So here the veins of the left side cross behind the aorta to reach the vena cava. Definitely here the aorta is present, so the third and fourth lumbar veins cross behind the aorta to reach the vena cava. Okay, now the first and second lumbar veins end in the ascending lumbar vein. So here you can see the first and second one will end into the ascending lumbar vein. So here you can find this ascending lumbar vein. So these second and first will end into this ascending lumbar vein on the right and left side, both the right side and the left side. The ascending lumbar vein is an anastomotic channel which connects the lateral sacral. So here lateral sacral, here this one is medial, lateral sacral and ilio, lumbar and subcostal veins. So all these three anastomosis to form the ascending lumbar vein. Okay, and this one also lies within the psoas muscle in front of the roots of the transverse processes of lumbar vertebrae. On joining the subcostal vein, so here you can find the subcostal vein, and joining the subcostal vein and finally the hemiazygos vein on the left side. Okay, on the right side it forms azygos vein. On the right side it forms azygos vein. So we have learned this hemiazygos and azygos in the thorax. So you can refer that video also. Next tributary is the right side gonadal or testicular or ovarian vein opens. So this is the right side gonadal vein. So here you can see very clearly this right side gonadal vein opens into the inferior cava just below the entrance of the renal veins. Okay, and the left gonadal vein drains into left renal vein. Here you can find here the left gonadal vein. Here you can see the left gonadal vein directly drains into left renal vein. The right gonadal vein is opening into the vena cava directly, but the left gonadal vein opens into renal vein, and this renal vein is left renal vein is opens into vena cava, inferior vena cava. So this is about the gonadal veins. Now coming to the renal veins. So these are the somewhat large veins on the posterior aspect after common iliac veins. So this renal veins join the inferior cava just below the transpyloric plane. Okay. Each renal vein lies in front of the corresponding artery. So that means these two veins present in front of the renal arteries. Okay, here you can see the renal, this one is the abdominal aorta. So both the arteries are, both the veins are present in front of the renal arteries itself. So the right vein is shorter. So here you can find this right vein is shorter because the inferior vena cava is located on the right side and which is very nearer to the right kidney. So the branch is definitely small. If you see the left kidney which is far away from the inferior vena cava, so the left renal artery is somewhat bigger than the right, and this one crosses, so this left vein crosses in front of the aorta, okay, and lies behind the pancreas and the splenic veins, and this one also receives the left suprarenal and gonadal veins. Okay, here you can find the left suprarenal and gonadal vein. So gonadal vein we have already discussed. Okay, so this right vein is shorter than the left, which lies behind the second part of duodenum. So it lies behind the second part of the duodenum. So please note it here. So when we deal with duodenum, you can relate this thing to the second part of the duodenum. Okay, next, if you see the right suprarenal vein, so here another tributary called as right suprarenal vein, which is extremely very short. So, and it emerges from the hilum of the gland. So this is the suprarenal gland. From the hilum of the gland, this suprarenal vein will comes like this on both the sides, and finally enters into the inferior vena cava. The left suprarenal vein opens into the left renal vein, and then it opens into the inferior vena cava. Only the right suprarenal vein opens into the inferior vena cava. The left suprarenal vein opens into the renal vein, and then it opens into the inferior vena cava. So in the tributaries, direct tributaries from the to the inferior vena cava, we can also add up this right suprarenal vein along with the other 5 tributaries. Next, the final one is the hepatic veins. The hepatic veins are 3, which are large, and many small veins. So these are the hepatic veins. So these are 3 in number, and many small veins which open directly into the anterior surface of the inferior vena cava just before it pierces the diaphragm. Okay, many other small veins also open directly on the anterior surface of the inferior vena cava, just it pierces the diaphragm. Okay, so these hepatic veins acts as an important support of liver also. Okay, so these are all the course and tributaries of the inferior vena cava. Thank you.